The Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Listen responsibly. Well, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the Cyber Minutes podcast. My name is Max, and today I'm joined by Flynn, and our special guest, Kirwin, has returned again. So thank you so much, Kirwin, for coming on. It's a pleasure having you here, as always.
Yeah, thank you.
So something that Flynn and I sort of discuss, we kind of discuss it almost every day, to be honest.
Yes.
It's
something we're quite passionate about.
Is this whole notion of Australia being the most cyber secure nation by 2030. A couple things. Do you think it's achievable? Do you have any insights on it? And what do you think about these new sanctions being put towards an individual, like what we're seeing with the person kind of blamed for the Medibank attack?
So first, answer your first initial question. At this rate, no, I don't think that's obtainable. I think it's a great goal to have, but it's a very loofy one. I think it's Claire O'Neill, the cabinet minister for cybersecurity or Home Affairs. It might be now. I think it's changed since potentially. You might have to check that.
She's the cybersecurity
lady. She's on LinkedIn. She's primarily speaks about cybersecurity, but sometimes occasionally talks about other topics. Yeah, Home Affairs. No, I don't think we're going to be getting there by 2030, especially not the number one. In fact, I hope we can strive to be in the top 5. When it comes to cyber operations and warfare, A, we don't have the capacity to do that, and B, I don't think we're willing to be an adversary in the space. Like, if you look at the US, if you look at China, if you look at Israel as well, they're all very, very active in cyber warfare, and Russia specifically. They're one of the most prolific attackers in the space. And I think India is actually closely following one of the most prolific adversaries in the space. And that's changing because more and more people are now getting access to internet and that kind of infrastructure. What can we do to ensure we get there? I mean, I think it's ridiculous that we have very large-scale corporations that aren't even doing the fundamentals. I'm a very security-esque advocate, if you will. I don't look at myself quite privacy secure, but that really varies, and I can explain that in depth. But companies, I feel like they should always aim to be the absolute most secure that they can potentially be without completely sacrificing productivity. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a trade-off between convenience and security. You always, at the end of the day, the lack of convenience, that sacrifice of convenience, is what's likely going to save you. It's a small cost to pay at the end of the day, and it'll become habit eventually. But no, when I'm seeing every single company continuously failing, even though they have some strong commitment to security, or they say they do, we're just continuously seeing them fail time and time again. And it's I'm talking about giants and specific industries aren't even doing things right. There's fantastic people in those companies that are really advocating for security and take our advice seriously, and I love it when I see that. But unfortunately, everything's working against them. You can't win when one person, one CISO or CSO, whatever it is. I think it is CISO or the CISO, if you will. It's a funny story with the legalities of that lately. But when one person is responsible for 25,000 or 50,000, sometimes even 500,000 different endpoints. What can they do?
Yeah, I feel with CISOs, it's often one step forward, 2 steps back, where it used to be just treated like complete shit or non-existent, really. And then it was, CISOs are coming in, and it's really just that at the end of the day, they're a scapegoat. They don't get the resourcing. They barely even speak to the C-suite. They're not talking to the board. They're talking to the CFO, and a lot of the time it's in the CFO's best interest to ignore that because you're just trying to save money.
Yeah.
And then they talk to the board. Thankfully, recently, CPS 234, I harp on about that a lot. A lot of the requirements are you got to be talking to the board. The board needs to be actively challenging security decisions, which is good to see. But, as you said, there's a big difference between, written documentation and the actual action.
Absolutely. I feel there's this weird disconnect with the C-suite. I get the sense that companies see security, and I guess it's true to some extent, that security is a cost center. But the way I see security personally is like it allows you to do it allows you to carry out functionality or serve the masses safely. Like if you want to have some functionality and you want to offer that to the world, like you know, with our current rules and policies that our countries have, like you need to offer a secure solution. And there really shouldn't be a divide between security and development. Like you can't like appropriately secure an application after it's been developed. It's so much harder to do that. Like you need to implement DevSecOps during development, and it has to be somewhere in the development life cycle. And we're just not seeing that with Australia. We don't have that in our development practices. Like if you go study computer science, they'll cover a content or like a course or two on cybersecurity, but like we're not really educating our new developers with security as something they should care about. It's like an afterthought. Like and someone else will manage that. Someone else will catch whatever vulnerability we have. But like, no, it has to be the developers. You guys, like, well, I have a formal background in development. I've done work as a contract software developer. Like, I get the sense. Like, I hope I can develop securely. I'm not amazing. I'm not a full-fledged software developer, nor will I be anytime soon. But I feel like I can code, and most of my solutions I typically code for myself. Like all my projects and developments, I code for myself. But I feel like really rookie developers use that same like mentality, like, oh, this is, I'm going to code this for myself, and then they, have these assumptions of how software should be built, and then when it gets pushed to production, it's with like this home lab rookie, poorly developed software or any kind of solution. And we just need to have more secure developers, and there's such an important calling for that, and I'm just not seeing that being answered.
It's funny you say that because we've had Flynn on, who's a software developer by trade, and same exactly he said, and that's coming from someone who's a software developer, not primarily security, and he basically said one of the big problems is they don't talk about security at all. One of the examples he used is they did a project and they were going through it was a static code analysis tool. I can't remember what it was, but basically it was coming up with a bunch of security errors, and they basically said, don't worry about it.
I think it's probably Sneak.
Or PMD maybe.
But
and basically it's like, okay, maybe that's not relevant for this current course, but don't say it's not important, because it is important. And this wasn't like a minor vulnerability. I remember Flynn explained it, that he did some more research and saw that it was something major that you could not put onto a live production server. It would be horrible.
And like, that's how they're being trained, and that's like, how can you expect like securely work in the workforce when you've been trained for 4 or 5 whatever amount of years he's been studying, and like an insecure manner? Like, you're not going to suddenly switch and like start thinking securely. Like, it needs to be from day 0 or day 1.
But even developers aside, is something I always say is security is a business problem. It's not just IT that deals with security, which is a lot of the time back to the information assets. You can't hold information assets and IT handles it all.
Yeah.
Because, finance is going to understand this information asset a lot better than IT is going to.
Mm.
It doesn't make sense, and a lot of people have this misassumption that IT will handle it. It doesn't work like that nowadays.
It's very interesting. Like, one of the things we recommend, and you probably would know as well, seeing your own compliance, is like, we recommend restricting who has access to what kind of data, and like keep it like strictly to business logic. Like, only an analyst needs to see analyst related things, yada yada. And
it's a big thing with like the macros and stuff like that. Macros should only be who has a demonstrated business requirement, because we know how powerful macros are.
You can get, and I can show you this, you can execute JavaScript or limited JavaScript in a PDF.
I've seen it.
It's so...
And
it's so stupid. Like, and this is how people get pwned, right? And it works, and it keeps working. And companies know this is how you get pwned, and yet companies are still insecure to it, or still get pwned by it. And it's shocking, because we know what we need to do to fix everything, but why are companies still failing? And it's like, it's been like this for years.
I think it's partially the guidance. It's partially, and maybe it's a bit of a crazy assumption, but I think that people are getting away with a slap on the wrist too.
I think the government needs to step in and be a little bit more stern. Like, if you're not compliant with this framework by this time, you're not allowed to operate in whatever. And maybe that's a bit far, but companies can't keep getting away with not adhering to known policies or known frameworks, known procedures, and they just keep doing it. And the government's not caring, but we're seeing critical infrastructure getting pwned time and time again. I feel like they don't have this drive, this push to be secure. They're like, okay, well, I'll make myself secure when I get hacked.
It's like you mentioned just before, it's a real big foundational issue, and it's like trying to build a concrete house on top of like sticks, right?
Yeah.
It's a real big issue with the foundations of developers. Even people who are working in cybersecurity now, not a lot of them would have an education in cybersecurity, right? They know what they've learned on the job, but sometimes when if you get too comfortable in your position and you start to say, okay, this thing doesn't really matter that much because 2 years ago when I was looking at it, there's no need for me to change it. Complacency is everywhere.
I think the government's even sort of dug themselves a hole here because they've been so negligent for so long, and now that they're kind of taking they are taking more of a approach, like with the CPS 234 reviews that I was in. But the problem is that because it's been so negligent for so long, that now that they put these harsh stuff on, nobody can do it. It's like the CPS 234 stuff. Everyone thought it was quite light, and then the tripartite reviews came out, and nobody was compliant.
So it needs to be more of a stepping stone.
Yes. And I think that's the problem with the whole 2030 approach, is that it's just not realistic. It's setting yourself up to failure.
2030, we're going to be the best ever. How are we actually going to get there? They've released this report, the strategy now, but the report really, it's grossly oversimplified. There's not actually any concrete steps that they put in.
Yes,
they've said, okay, we're going to go from how we are now and look at filling the gaps, and then we're going to look at expanding the amount of protection, and then we're going to go further from that. But how actually are you going to do that?
I think that's a big problem I have, is that a lot of it feels like a front to save face. Even going back to recently in the news, they've basically put sanctions on the person responsible for the Medibank breach. I don't mean to completely discredit the work of the ASD and stuff like that, because, I suppose it's good to a degree that we know who's responsible for it, but realistically, then it's never going to affect them because it's a sanction on a Russian hacker. It doesn't matter really. Like they're not
going to expedite him.
Right?
They can't.
And also, they're like, oh, you can't do business with this person, which that's kind of making ransomware illegal, which we've just talked about if that's the right move or not. And then also, it's cryptocurrency. Like, there's ways around it anyway. Like, how are you going to even track it?
Yeah, depending on the cryptocurrency. It's funny that unlike Monero, which is a very privacy-oriented cryptocurrency, they refuse to accept payments in Bitcoin because it's on the blockchain, right? So it's all mathematically permanent. So there will forever be trace of where the money went, what wallet went to. All right, even if they went to several mixes and try to split across a whole division of different wallets and then back into the one, yada yada. Yeah, there'll be forever a trail.
Yeah.
But plenty seeing these ransomware operators wisen up a little bit because they're now if you look at some online forums through obvious methods, the only one way you can access it, I think everyone knows about Tor.
Yeah.
But they're actually hiring pen testers. They're hiring security researchers. And they're like, how can we be more secure? Well, it's so funny. Yeah. It's so amusing seeing these criminal organizations care more about security than people that are making money. It's like, not only do they make money off of security, but they're screwing back in and reinvesting it and stuff. I found that so amusing.
Yeah, I thought sort of interesting, and a funny thing that I learned was that, they also have 24/7 customers.
Oh yeah, there's I think it is Alfie Black Hat again, we spoke about in the past, but they literally have a support line where you open the ransomware and you just talk to it and be like, oh, this isn't working.
One thing I did want to bring up, and this was going back to the Australian government, how we can fix, I feel like there should be more, I wouldn't really say endorsement for security researchers. I just feel like there needs to be less limitations for an Australian researcher doing research on any kind of critical infrastructure. I feel like if I find some critical vulnerability, I as a security researcher should not be scared to report it to the Australian government. I feel like we've made great strides with bug bounty programs and all of these private ones as well. And I'm great to see that, this is now slowly becoming more and more of a thing. But I feel like we need to, I don't want to say loosen the laws, but I feel like some white hat hacker coming out to publicize any kind of research that they have, they should not be fearing any kind of retribution from the Australian government or whatever company they just pwned. Like, a lot of the work we did was exactly like that, and that's how we got our customers. Like, we would say, hey, we found this critical issue in your environment. Like, we're not expecting you to pay us. This is the full-fledged report of how we did it. This is how you can fix it. This is why you should fix it. If you don't fix it between 30 to 90 days, we're going to the Australian government and we're showing, what happened, how it happened. And we've done that a number of times, but there seems to be this weird pushback of companies going like, you shouldn't even be looking. Like, why are you looking in the first place?
So, like, it's kind of the wrong attitude. Going back to the Russian sanctions on this guy, I feel like it was the same thing. It was saving face where, as I said, I think that it is valuable to an extent, but the way that it's been marketed is this is a big day in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of taking away from the problem that why is this happening in the first place? It's not because, well, it is because, there's bad guys in Russia that want to steal our data, but why are we being targeted so much?
Yeah.
And why is it happening so frequently?
I feel like if we can turn around and make a more of an environment or like fellow researchers going about and actively looking at other companies, because currently what's happening is like some security researcher gets hired by some firm or say some company to be part of some internal team. They're just sitting there and they're looking at their own alerts for their own company. They're not really poking around looking at some random Australian university or something. Like, I feel like there needs to be some more incentive for like security researchers to actually go out and find, like, that's the purpose and a goal of a bug bounty program. But what companies need to go out and sign up for these programs, I feel like there should be some kind of like a law implemented where, like, even if they're not part of a program, if some kind of like critical issue or vulnerability is found, or it doesn't even have to be critical, if any kind of issue that can be exploited is found, they should be able to go to this company and say like, hey, I found this, like, do with it what you will, like, hopefully you'll fix it, yada yada.
And it's actually interesting you say that, like, law with bug bounties, because maybe that's something that could go into a framework. I've never seen that before. Penetration testing usually is. Bug bounties is probably something we could do, although I know bug bounties isn't perfect.
Oh yes, absolutely not.
And some people get this misconception that, we got a bug bounty out there, so...
Wouldn't that be such an interesting law to be passed? Or like a regulation by APRA that you must have?
I feel like it would be a good incentive to get our offensive security up. Like, you just make a couple of crazy hacker kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And make Australia more secure at the same time.
And it puts some more money into the cybersecurity community.
Yeah, look, I honestly, I love cybersecurity in the sense it's just such a fun industry. Like, I'm glad that I really got heavily into CTFs and whatnot. I think my profile for Hack the Box, I'm like 750th in Australia. No, actually, I might have it up. Not in Australia. It might be even in the world. I'm sorry. But it's funny. If you look at the profile, like, there's not enough people engaging in these communities, and like, if all those people, like, me included, being top 1% in like try hacking, it's not that difficult, right?
Yeah, I see that. I was talking to someone about this the other day when they're like, I want to get the top 1%. I was like, do you know how many people on LinkedIn I see the top 1%?
It's not like top 0.1%, then I'll be a little bit impressed. But like, it shows me how much time you've invested in these things. But what I really like it for is it gamifies the entire process, and all those skills that you learn from those is directly applicable to pen testing. And it's nice, like, I now see it as a sport. Like, I don't just target companies or anything, like, just for like monetary gain. Like, I get paid well enough. I'm not interested in monetary gain, but doing it for the sport, doing it for engagement, it's just so much fun. It's a really cool.
It's the rush when you get the flag.
When you get a win, there's nothing like that.
It's especially, as I said, I've kind of been going back to square one and doing it. Sometimes you do get those frustrations when you can't figure out something. So, it's even better when you're stuck on something for so long and then you
get the win.
Yeah. Something I might just bring up is that I've recently discovered, and we're having a little chat about an AI pen testing game that we've discovered. I thought it was pretty on topic. Mm-hmm. So it's called Tensor Trust. It's where you get to try and attack other people's AI, and the AI that they have made and they need to defend. You're able to give prompts to suggest ways to defend it. And like, it's hard to sort of explain, but it's a really, really fun game. It's just another one to add on the list of cool CTF games.
Yeah. And AI is going to be a big problem in the future.
Oh, have you guys seen? Have you seen the Rabbit one? It's a new AI. So what are some limitations with GPT? Like, just off the top of your head.
I'd say one thing that I've been finding recently is contextualization. That's
It gets a lot of questions.
Yeah, that gets a lot wrong. It's getting more and more restrictive, which I'm quite upset by. But like, what I'm talking about is its inability to do things for you. Like, you know, have you heard of like agents, which came out like 4 to 6 months ago? They had this whole thing like you have little agents that are able to execute functionality for you. Like they can go visit a site if there isn't proper like protection. Right. So, yeah. But this new thing called Rabbit R1, it's by some Chinese company based in the US. Actually, I don't think it's a Chinese company. Sorry, the founder is Chinese. But I bought this product and I'm still waiting for it. I'm very eager to test it. But it is, if you give it your say like credentials for Spotify, Instagram, bank, let's just say theoretically everything. Yeah, it can perform actions for you. Like, hey, can you make a booking for this restaurant? Can you transfer X amount to this guy? Yada yada. Have a look at this. Rabbit with a specific device for it. It's like 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. It's got a camera, 4 megapixels.
Tell you what's funny. Bing.ai or Copilot now, Microsoft Copilot. I recently got access to Copilot and I've been messing with it because it's funny how stupid it is. Because it's basically just Bing. And I can convince it sometimes to do things it shouldn't, but it's not even correct. I convinced it to do an Nmap scan or similar functionality of my website, and it didn't even get it right at all.
No. Yeah, I wonder.
They like gave me the wrong IP, like wrong everything, and I was like, okay, so I got something there, but it's completely wrong. It's strange. But
interestingly enough, CES 2024, that's where I heard about Rabbit R1. I knew it was familiar, but yeah. CES 2024, that was cool.
Yeah, the new monitors at 4K 240 hertz OLED 32-inch one. I'm going to grab one. They look absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kirwin. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you. And can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to returning once more.
Thanks for listening. Just a reminder that the Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Have a cybersecurity question? Send an email to cyberminutespodcast@gmail.com, as we'd love to answer it. Stay cyber safe.